The depths of Sagami, a secret undersea installation. The typhoon had passed 3 days ago, but the waters of Sagami Bay still churned with residual energy. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood on the deck of the research vessel Kaiyo Maru, watching the crane lower the deep-sea submersible into the dark Pacific waters. At 42, she had spent half her life studying the ocean floor, but something about today felt different. "Ready when you are, Doctor," her pilot, Kenji Watanabe, called from inside the submersible spherical cabin. Yuki climbed down the ladder and squeezed through the narrow hatch. The interior smelled of recycled air and electronics. She had made this descent hundreds of times, yet her heart still raced as the hatch sealed with a pneumatic hiss. "Taking us down to 800 meters, Kenji announced, his weathered hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. "Should reach the canyon floor in about 20 minutes. The submersible, nicknamed Shinkai 7, began its slow descent. Sunlight faded within minutes, replaced by an alien darkness punctuated only by the vehicle's exterior lights and the occasional bioluminescent creature drifting past the viewport. Yuki had spent the last 3 years mapping the Sagami Trough, a deep submarine canyon that plunged to depths exceeding 1,500 meters. The bay itself was a geological wonder, close to Tokyo yet harboring some of the deepest waters near any major city in the world. It was also a place of secrets. "Approaching 400 meters, Kenji reported. "All systems normal." Yuki activated her tablet, pulling up the sonar data that had brought them here. 2 weeks ago, her research team had detected an unusual acoustic signature near a seamount on the canyon's western slope. The signal was too regular to be geological, too deep to be a wreck. When she'd enhanced the imaging, she'd seen what appeared to be a geometric structure partially buried in sediment. "There," she said, pointing at the sonar display. "Bearing 270, about 600 meters ahead." As they descended past 700 meters, the submersible's powerful lights began to illuminate the seafloor. Pale sediment stretched in all directions, occasionally disturbed by the skeletal remains of whale falls or the delicate fronds of deep-sea corals. Then Kenji saw it. What in the... Rising from the seafloor like some ancient monument was a structure unlike anything Yuki had ever seen. It was massive, roughly cylindrical, with a diameter of at least 50 meters. The surface was covered in marine growth, but beneath the biological layer, she could make out what appeared to be concrete and metal. "Take us closer," Yuki whispered. As they approached, more details emerged. The structure had multiple levels, with what looked like observation ports or windows at regular intervals. Some were dark, others seemed to reflect their lights in a way that suggested intact glass or acrylic. Near the base, partially buried in sediment, was an opening, a tunnel entrance large enough to accommodate a vehicle. "This is impossible," Kenji muttered. "This depth, this location, who could have built this?" Yuki was already photographing everything, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. The marine growth suggested the structure was at least several decades old, possibly more. But the construction quality, even accounting for deterioration, was extraordinary. "Look at the entrance," she said. "There are rails. This was designed for submersibles or some kind of underwater transport." Kenji maneuvered Shinkai 7 slowly around the structure. On the far side, they discovered something even more remarkable, a door, a massive circular portal with what appeared to be a locking mechanism. And next to it, weathered but unmistakable, were characters in Japanese kanji. Yuki's breath caught as she translated, "Imperial Navy Research Station Hiker 7. Authorized personnel only." Imperial Navy. Kenji's voice was barely audible. That would mean World War II, Yuki finished. "This base has been down here since the 1940s. Back aboard the Kaiyo Maru, Yuki immediately contacted her supervisor at the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology. Within hours, her discovery had reached the highest levels of government. By the following morning, a military helicopter had arrived, and Yuki found herself sitting across from 2 men in civilian clothes who were clearly not civilian. "Dr. Tanaka," the older man began, "I am Tanaka Hiroshi from the Ministry of Defense Historical Records Department." He placed a slim briefcase on the table. "What you've discovered is classified material related to national security, even after 8 decades. The younger man, who introduced himself only as Soto, added, "We need you to understand the sensitivity of this situation before we proceed." Yuki felt a chill. "I'm a scientist. I've discovered what appears to be a significant historical and archaeological site. The public has a right." "The public has a right to safety," Tanaka interrupted, not unkindly. "What I'm about to tell you has been classified since 1945. Only a handful of people in each generation have known the full truth." He opened the briefcase and removed a weathered folder marked with the Imperial Chrysanthemum seal. Inside were documents, photographs, and technical drawings that looked like they'd been preserved from another era. In 1942, Tanaka began. As the war situation deteriorated, Imperial Navy leadership approved a program called Hiker, the Depths. The goal was to create a network of underwater research and development facilities where Japan's best minds could work on advanced weapons systems, free from American air raids. He spread several photographs across the table. They showed the construction of massive concrete sections, submarines towing strange equipment, and what appeared to be a fleet of specialized vessels. 7 facilities were planned. Only 3 were completed before the war ended. The one you discovered, Hiker 7, was the most ambitious. It wasn't just a research station. It was a fully functioning underwater base capable of supporting over 200 personnel for months at a time. Yuki studied the photographs. The engineering required for such a project in the 1940s seemed impossible. How did they manage the pressure at that depth? The materials, the construction techniques? Soto leaned forward. "That's precisely why this remains classified. The Imperial Navy had help." "Help from whom?" "The Germans," Tanaka said. In 1941, the submarine U-234 arrived in Japan carrying not just uranium oxide for atomic research, but also technical specialists and plans for advanced undersea construction. The Germans had been developing their own deep-sea capabilities. They shared that knowledge with Japan as part of the Axis alliance. He pulled out another document, this one showing technical specifications in both Japanese and German. The base used a combination of reinforced concrete caissoons and specialized steel alloys that were decades ahead of their time. The pressure hulls were designed using principles that wouldn't be rediscovered until the 1960s. What were they researching down there? Yuki asked. The 2 men exchanged glances. "Everything," Soto said quietly. "Advanced torpedoes, submarine detection systems, underwater acoustic weapons. And according to some records." He hesitated. "Biological research." "What kind of biological research?" "We're not entirely sure," Tanaka admitted. When the war ended, the base was evacuated. Most records were destroyed. What we do know is that they were studying deep-sea organisms, looking for military applications. There were rumors of attempts to create some kind of underwater surveillance system using trained marine animals. Yuki felt a mixture of fascination and unease. What happened to the personnel? They were ordered to surface in August 1945, after the surrender. Most did. But according to naval records, at least 30 personnel from Hiker 7 never returned. The official report stated they were lost in a typhoon during the evacuation. And the base itself? "Sealed and forgotten," Tanaka said. "Until now. Which brings us to why we're here, Dr. Tanaka. We need your expertise. We need you to help us document what's inside that facility before we decide what to do with it." 1 week later, Yuki found herself aboard a much larger vessel, a Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force submarine support ship that had been diverted from training exercises. With her were Kenji, 2 military divers trained in deep-sea operations, a structural engineer from the Ministry of Defense, and the ever-present Tanaka and Soto. They had spent days reviewing the historical documents and planning their approach. The facility's main entrance appeared to be intact, and sonar imaging suggested that several internal chambers had maintained their structural integrity. Whether they were still watertight was another question. "We're using a military-grade ROV first," explained Commander Ishida, the JMSDF officer in charge of the operation. "We need to assess stability before sending anyone inside." The remotely operated vehicle was far more sophisticated than anything Yuki had used in her research. As they watched its cameras on the control room monitors, it approached the massive circular door she'd photographed earlier. "Magnify that section," Soto ordered, pointing at the locking mechanism. The image zoomed in, revealing an intact wheel lock and what appeared to be a numerical keypad, impossibly advanced for the 1940s, yet unmistakably old. They had electronic locks. Yuki marveled. "German technology," Tanaka reminded her. The same engineers who designed this also worked on the Enigma machines. The ROV's manipulator arms reached out and grasped the wheel. On the first attempt, nothing happened. Decades of marine growth and corrosion had fused the mechanism. But after several tries and the application of a specialized cutting torch, there was movement. "It's turning," the ROV pilot announced. The massive door swung slowly inward, revealing a dark passage beyond. The ROV's lights penetrated perhaps 20 meters before being swallowed by darkness. "Internal pressure appears to be equalized with external," a technician reported. "The chamber is flooded." "Take us in," Commander Ishida ordered. The ROV glided forward into the tunnel. The passage was lined with metal, likely steel or some alloy, now heavily corroded but still intact. Every 10 meters, they passed through what appeared to be pressure doors, all standing open. After 50 meters, the tunnel opened into a larger space. The ROV's lights swept across what was unmistakably a docking bay. Along one wall, they could see the skeletal remains of what had once been small submersibles. Their hulls collapsed from decades of pressure and decay. "Look at the ceiling," Yuki pointed. Above the docking bay, barely visible through the murk, was a large chamber. "I think that's an airlock," she said. "If they could pump water out of this chamber, they could surface their vessels inside the base." "We need to go deeper," Soto said. "The research sections would be in the more protected areas." The ROV continued, finding a passage that led upward at a slight angle. They passed through more pressure doors, each one a testament to the engineering marvel this facility represented. Finally, they entered what appeared to be a main corridor. Here, the preservation was remarkable. The corridor was still dry, or at least, there was air trapped in the upper portion. The ROV broke the surface, and suddenly they were looking at a scene frozen in time. The walls were lined with pipes and electrical conduits. Doors led off to various rooms, each marked with kanji labels: Laboratory 3, Observation Room, Personnel Quarters. "We need to send in a team," Yuki said. "There's so much we can learn from this." "It could be dangerous," Commander Ishida cautioned. "The structural integrity after 80 years. "I'm going," Yuki interrupted. "This is the archaeological discovery of the century. I have to see it with my own eyes." 2 days later, Yuki was back in a submersible, but this time she was accompanied by Commander Ishida and a structural engineer named Yamamoto. They wore specialized dive suits capable of withstanding the pressure at depth, and each carried emergency breathing apparatus and communication equipment. The journey to the base was now familiar, but as they approached the open entrance, Yuki felt her heart racing. They were about to step into a world that had been sealed for 8 decades, a capsule of history preserved in the crushing depths of the Pacific. They navigated through the flooded sections carefully, following the path the ROV had mapped. When they finally surfaced in the air-filled corridor, Yuki felt like an astronaut landing on an alien world. "Atmosphere reading," Yamamoto announced, checking his instruments. "Oxygen at 18%, nitrogen 79%, carbon dioxide at 3%. Breathable, but I wouldn't recommend it for extended periods." "How is there still air?" Yuki wondered aloud. "Emergency systems," Commander Ishida said, his light illuminating what appeared to be large storage tanks along one wall. "They must have installed emergency life support that activated when the base was sealed. After 80 years, the oxygen has been gradually depleted, but the nitrogen remains." They moved carefully down the corridor, their lights revealing more details. The walls were painted an institutional green, now faded and peeling. Pipes ran along the ceiling, and every few meters they passed junction boxes that once controlled the base's electrical systems. The first door they tried led to what appeared to be a sleeping quarters. For metal bunk beds were still in place, their mattresses long since rotted away. Personal items were scattered around: a comb, a water-damaged book, a photograph in a corroded frame. Yuki picked up the photograph carefully. The image was barely visible, but she could make out several men in naval uniforms, smiling at the camera. On the back, someone had written, "Hiker 7 Crew, November 1944. These were real people, she whispered. Scientists, engineers, sailors. They lived and worked here, hundreds of meters underwater, while the world above was tearing itself apart. They continued deeper into the facility. Each room told a story: a galley with pots still hanging from hooks, a recreation room with a go-board set up mid-game, an office with papers scattered across a metal desk. Then they found the laboratories. The first lab they entered was clearly dedicated to marine biology. Large tanks lined the walls, their glass fronts now cracked and empty. Along one wall were examination tables with instruments still laid out: scalpels, measuring tools, specimen jars. But it was what they found in the preservation cabinets that made Yuki's scientific mind reel. Row after row of specimens, sealed in glass jars filled with what must have been formaldehyde or some other preservative. Deep-sea fish species, some of which Yuki didn't recognize, others that were clearly known species but from earlier in their evolutionary timeline. They were doing serious scientific work here, she said, photographing everything. This isn't just military research, this is fundamental biology. In another lab, they found something more disturbing. This room was different, more clinical, with heavy restraints on the examination tables and what appeared to be monitoring equipment far more sophisticated than anything in the previous rooms. What were they doing in here? Yamamoto wondered. Soto, who had remained silent until now, spoke up over the radio from the submersible. According to the partial records we have, they were attempting to study the effects of deep-sea pressure on human physiology. They were trying to develop methods for personnel to work at greater depths without decompression. Human experimentation. Yuki felt a chill. It was war, Soto replied quietly. Every nation was doing things they would later regret. They moved on, documenting everything. In one room, they found technical drawings for torpedo designs. In another, prototype acoustic detection equipment. The facility was a time capsule of wartime innovation, both brilliant and terrible. Finally, they reached what appeared to be the command center. This room was larger than the others, with a central table surrounded by chairs. Maps of the Pacific were pinned to the walls, marked with positions and dates. A large window looked out into the dark ocean, or what had been a window before it was blocked by a massive blast door. This is where they ran operations, Commander Ishida said. Look at this. He was examining a logbook left open on the command table. The paper was remarkably preserved in the dry atmosphere. The entries were in careful handwriting, documenting daily operations, research progress, and personnel notes. Yuki read the last entry aloud. August 13, 1945. Received orders from Tokyo to prepare for evacuation. The Emperor has decided to accept the Potsdam Declaration. All research materials to be destroyed or taken to surface. Facility to be sealed per Emergency Protocol 7. Personnel will evacuate in shifts beginning tomorrow. May this facility remain hidden, a monument to what we tried to achieve in the name of our nation. The entry was signed by Captain Tokushi Yamamoto, commanding officer of Hiker 7. He knew, Yuki said softly. He knew they were sealing away something important. Over the next week, the team made several more excursions into Hiker 7. Each visit revealed more secrets, more pieces of the puzzle. They found an extensive library containing research papers, technical manuals, and personal journals. They discovered workshops where prototype equipment was manufactured. They even found a small shrine where the personnel had prayed for safety and success. But it was in the deepest section of the facility, accessed through a passage that descended another 50 meters into the bedrock, that they made their most significant discovery. This section was different from the rest. The construction was even more robust, with multiple pressure doors and what appeared to be extensive security measures. When they finally entered the main chamber, they found themselves in what could only be described as an archive. Metal cabinets lined the walls, each one sealed with elaborate locks. In the center of the room was a large vault, its door still sealed. "This is where they kept their most important work," Tanaka said, having joined them for this expedition. According to the fragmentary records, this was the deep archive. Everything that couldn't be evacuated had to be stored here. With considerable effort, they managed to open one of the cabinets. Inside were rows of metal containers, each labeled with dates and project codes. The documents inside were remarkably well preserved, protected from moisture and decay. As Yuki carefully examined the papers, she realized she was looking at research that had been decades ahead of its time. There were designs for advanced sonar systems that wouldn't be developed until the 1960s. Plans for underwater habitats that resembled modern offshore facilities. Even early concepts for what appeared to be underwater drones. "This is incredible," she breathed. If this research had been made public after the war, it could have advanced ocean science by decades. But there were darker discoveries too. Documents detailing experiments that violated any ethical standard. Plans for weapon systems designed to cause maximum devastation. Research into biological agents derived from deep-sea organisms. "This is why it had to stay secret," Soto said grimly. "Not just to protect Japan's image, but because some of this knowledge is too dangerous to be widely known." The vault in the center of the room proved more challenging. It was a massive structure, clearly designed to withstand anything short of a direct torpedo hit. The locking mechanism was complex, requiring multiple keys and combination sequences. After 2 days of work, using information pieced together from documents found elsewhere in the base, they finally managed to open it. Inside was a single metal case, sealed and labeled with the highest security classification. When they carefully opened it, they found a single leather-bound journal and a collection of photographic negatives. The journal belonged to Dr. Kenji Matsumoto, who according to other records had been the chief scientist at Hiker 7. His entries chronicled the base's final months and revealed something unexpected. "They knew the war was lost by early 1945, Yuki read aloud. But they continued their work, not for victory, but for the future. Matsumoto writes that he and several other scientists believed their research could benefit humanity after the war. They were deliberately documenting everything, hoping it would be found someday." The journal's final entries were haunting. August 14, 1945. "Tomorrow we evacuate. I have sealed our most important research in the deep vault, along with this journal. To whoever finds this, we were not monsters, though we served a regime that committed monstrous acts. We were scientists, trying to push the boundaries of human knowledge even as the world burned around us. Judge us harshly for our failures, but perhaps find value in what we discovered. The ocean holds secrets that could save humanity or destroy it. Use this knowledge wisely." The photographs, when carefully developed, showed images of the base during its operational period. Scientists at work in the laboratories. Personnel gathered for meals. Submersibles entering and leaving the docking bay. And in several images, something unexpected. What appeared to be interaction with deep-sea creatures in specially designed observation chambers. They were trying to communicate, Yuki realized. They had discovered something about deep-sea life, some form of intelligence or complexity we still don't fully understand. Back on the surface, the team gathered to discuss what to do with their discovery. The debate was heated and complex, involving not just the scientific and military personnel, but government officials, ethicists, and historians. "This facility represents an invaluable historical resource," argued Dr. Suzuki, a historian from Tokyo University who had been brought in to consult. "It should be preserved and, eventually, made public. The Japanese people have a right to know this part of their history." "The security implications are enormous," countered Soto. "Much of this research is still classified for good reason. Some of the weapons designs, if they fell into the wrong hands." "It's been 80 years, Yuki interrupted. "The Cold War is over. Most of the technology here has been surpassed. What possible security threat could it pose?" Tanaka cleared his throat. "It's not just about the technology. It's about the ethical implications. If we make public the full extent of the human experimentation that occurred here, It could cause an international incident. Relations with other nations could be affected. War crime tribunals could be reopened. But that's exactly why it needs to be public, Dr. Suzuki argued. We can't hide from history. The Comfort Women, Unit 731, the Nanjing Massacre. Japan has struggled with acknowledging its wartime actions. This is another piece of that puzzle. Commander Ishida raised a practical concern. There's also the question of safety. The facility is structurally sound now, but it won't last forever. At some point, it will collapse. If we're going to preserve it, we need to act now. That means either extensive underwater preservation efforts or bringing everything to the surface, Yamamoto finished. Which would require a major operation and couldn't be kept secret. Yuki had been quiet, thinking. Finally, she spoke. I've spent the last 2 weeks exploring Hiker 7. I've held journals written by the people who worked there. I've seen their sleeping quarters, their personal effects. And I've examined their research, both the brilliant discoveries and the terrible experiments. She paused, looking around the room. What I've realized is that Hiker 7 isn't just a military base or a research facility. It's a monument to human ambition and human fallibility. It shows what we're capable of when we push the boundaries of knowledge, and what we're capable of when we abandon our ethics in pursuit of victory. What are you suggesting? Tanaka asked. A compromise, Yuki said. We preserve the facility and document everything thoroughly. We make public the historical fact of its existence and the general nature of the research conducted there. But we carefully curate what specific details are released, working with international partners and ethics committees. She pulled up an image on her tablet, one of the photographs they'd found showing the Hiker 7 crew. These men are all dead now. Most have no living descendants who remember them. But their work, for better and worse, represents an important chapter in the history of ocean science and military technology. We owe it to future generations to preserve that history, even the uncomfortable parts. And the base itself? Commander Ishida asked. We leave it where it is, Yuki said. We install preservation systems to prevent further deterioration. We remove the most sensitive materials for proper archiving and analysis. But the facility itself becomes a protected site, an underwater museum, if you will. In the future, when the technology exists to make it safely accessible, it could be visited by researchers and perhaps even the public. There was a long silence as everyone considered her proposal. Finally, Tanaka nodded slowly. It's not perfect, but it might be workable. We'd need approval at the highest levels of government. And international cooperation, Dr. Suzuki added. This isn't just Japan's history. The German involvement, the impact on the war, other nations have a stake in this. Then we propose it, Yuki said. We present the options clearly and let the decision-makers decide. But in the meantime, we continue to document everything. Because no matter what's decided, we have a responsibility to preserve this knowledge. 6 months later, Yuki stood in the conference room of the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, preparing for the public announcement. The government had made its decision, largely following her recommendation. Hiker 7 would be preserved in situ, with selected materials brought to the surface for study and eventual display. An international committee had been formed, including representatives from Japan, Germany, the United States, and the United Nations. They would oversee the preservation efforts and the gradual release of information about the facility. The press conference was scheduled for the afternoon. Yuki had prepared her statement, carefully balancing scientific enthusiasm with historical sensitivity. She knew the announcement would generate controversy. Some would argue for complete disclosure, others for continued secrecy. But as she reviewed her notes, her phone rang. It was Commander Ishida. Dr. Tanaka, we have a situation at the site. Her heart sank. What kind of situation? The ROV crew was conducting routine monitoring when they noticed something unusual. One of the sealed sections, the one we couldn't access during our initial exploration, appears to have been recently opened. Recently? That's impossible. The base has been sealed for 80 years. That's what we thought. But the blast door that was blocking the passage is now ajar. And Doctor, there are fresh marks on the locking mechanism. Someone has been inside the base. Yuki felt a chill. How is that possible? We don't know. But there's more. We sent the ROV through the newly opened passage. It leads to another section of the facility, one that wasn't on any of the plans we found. And inside. Inside what? You need to see this yourself. We're sending a helicopter to pick you up. 2 hours later, Yuki was back in a submersible, descending once again into the darkness of Sagami Bay. Beside her, Commander Ishida looked grim. I've been ordered not to speculate, he said. But I'll tell you what we know. The section that's been opened appears to be a completely separate facility, connected to Hiker 7 but independently operated. The construction is different, more advanced, if that's possible. Who could have opened it? That's the question. The ROV footage shows modern tools were used, cutting equipment, specialized locks picks. Someone with extensive knowledge of the base's layout and security systems. When they reached the newly opened passage, Yuki could see what he meant. The massive blast door, which in all their previous explorations had appeared permanently sealed, now stood partially open. Fresh scrape marks marred the marine growth around its edges. They navigated through carefully, finding themselves in a section of the base they had never seen. This area was even better preserved than the rest, almost pristine, as if it had been sealed more recently. The passage led to a large chamber that appeared to be another laboratory. But this one was different from anything they'd seen before. The equipment was more sophisticated, the layout more modern. And in the center of the room was something that made Yuki's breath catch. It was an observation tank, far larger than any they'd found in the other sections. And inside, suspended in what appeared to be a specialized preservation fluid, was a specimen unlike anything she'd ever seen. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. The skin was a translucent gray, and she could see what appeared to be gills along the sides of the torso. The limbs were elongated, ending in webbed fingers and toes. The head was larger than a human's, with enormous eyes adapted for deep-sea vision. What is that? Commander Ishida whispered. Before Yuki could answer, her radio crackled to life. It was Soto's voice, but there was something different about his tone, a mixture of resignation and something else she couldn't identify. Dr. Tanaka, I need you to return to the surface immediately. There's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you from the beginning. What are you talking about? Hiker 7 wasn't just a research facility. It was also a recovery and study site. In 1943, a Japanese submarine encountered something in the deep waters east of here. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. They brought specimens back to the base for study. Yuki stared at the creature in the tank. What species is this? There was a long pause. We don't know. But according to the classified records that even I wasn't given access to until recently, they were intelligent. And they weren't the only ones. What do you mean? The base wasn't evacuated because of the surrender, Dr. Tanaka. It was evacuated because of a containment breach. Several of the specimens escaped back into the ocean. And according to the final reports. He paused. They were never found. Yuki felt the weight of those words. You're saying there could be more of these things out there? I'm saying that someone has been monitoring this base for decades, keeping it secret not just because of the wartime research, but because of what else might be down there. And whoever opened that section recently, they knew exactly what they were looking for. As if in response to his words, the lights in the chamber suddenly flickered. Then, from somewhere deeper in the newly discovered section, they heard it. A sound unlike anything Yuki had experienced underwater. It was complex, rhythmic, almost musical. We need to leave, Commander Ishida said urgently. Now. But Yuki couldn't move. She was transfixed by what she was seeing. The creature in the tank, she had assumed it was dead, preserved. But now, as the strange sound echoed through the facility, she saw its eyes open. They were dark, intelligent, and very much alive. The depths keep their secrets. The discovery of the living specimen in Hiker 7 changed everything. The planned public announcement was postponed indefinitely. The facility was placed under strict military quarantine, with access restricted to a handful of cleared personnel. Yuki found herself at the center of an international scientific effort to understand what they'd found. The creature, they refused to call it a specimen anymore, showed signs of consciousness far beyond what anyone had expected. It responded to sound, to light, to their presence. And the more they studied it, the more questions arose. Was it the last of its kind, or were there more in the deep ocean? How had it survived for 80 years in suspended animation? And most troubling of all, what had happened during the containment breach in 1945? The historical records Soto finally shared painted a terrifying picture. In the final months of the war, as desperation set in, the scientists at Hiker 7 had attempted to weaponize their discoveries. They had tried to train the creatures, to use them as living weapons against Allied submarines. But the creatures were too intelligent, too willful. They had escaped, and several base personnel had died in the breach. The survivors had sealed the specialized containment section and evacuated, leaving behind one specimen that couldn't be moved. They had assumed it would die. They had been wrong. Now, as Yuki stood in a secure conference room in Tokyo, surrounded by government officials, military leaders, and scientists from around the world, she understood the magnitude of what they faced. "The question before us," said the Prime Minister, "is not just what to do with Hiker 7, but what to do with what we've found there. This discovery has implications for our understanding of life on Earth, of intelligence, of what might exist in the unexplored depths of our oceans. We need to study it," argued one of the American scientists. "This could be the most important biological discovery in history." "And what if there are more?" countered a military advisor. "What if opening this door leads to something we can't control?" Yuki had been listening quietly, but now she spoke. "With respect, that door is already open. The creature is alive and aware. Others may exist in the ocean depths. We can't put this genie back in the bottle." She pulled up an image on the screen, the last photograph they'd taken inside the facility before the military lockdown. It showed the creature pressed against the glass of its tank, one webbed hand raised as if in greeting or perhaps warning. "What we can do," Yuki continued, "is approach this with humility and caution. For 80 years, this facility has kept its secrets. Now those secrets are exposed. We have a choice. We can treat this as a threat to be contained, or as an opportunity to expand our understanding of life itself." "And if containment fails?" someone asked. "If others like it are out there?" Yuki thought of the strange musical sounds they'd heard, echoing through the deep. She thought of the intelligence she'd seen in those dark eyes. And she thought of Dr. Matsumoto's final journal entry, written 80 years ago. "The ocean holds secrets that could save humanity or destroy it." "Then we'll face that when it comes," she said quietly. "But we'll face it with knowledge, not ignorance. With courage, not fear." The decision was made that day, though it would be years before the full implications became clear. Hiker 7 would remain sealed, a monument to human ambition and a reminder of mysteries yet unsolved. The creature would be studied, carefully and ethically. And the search would begin, a careful, systematic exploration of the deep ocean, looking for answers to questions humanity hadn't known.